Thank you, Sharzi, for the introduction, and good morning, or should I say good afternoon, everyone. So I'm conscious that I stand between you and lunch, so we'll try to keep it as exciting as possible. But it happens that green hydrogen is exciting, so I hope that you'll have an interesting session ahead of you. So so of course, we're in Saudi Arabia today, we're in the GCC, so I guess maybe I think today's topic is to understand a little bit where and how green hydrogen really positions itself in the GCC, and how really the GCC can really take the benefit of this transition that we'll be seeing to really remain a leader in the energy sector to the transition. Next, please. Maybe before getting into what is green hydrogen, let's start again. I know many of you are familiar now, you've heard that a few times, but sometimes it's worth reminding us why we're talking about hydrogen to start with. So hydrogen is already a widely traded commodity. Nowadays, we're talking about roughly 95 million tons per year of hydrogen, roughly used mostly for industrial application, big stuff, refining, ammonia for fertilizers primarily, and methanol. And this is pretty dirty. We're talking about 1 billion tons of CO2 emitted every year. So if we were to just simply focus at decarbonizing what we have today in terms of hydrogen production, this is a tremendous opportunity. You've heard about the NEOM Green Hydrogen Project, tremendous investment, $8.4 billion. That's 0.2 million tons per year of hydrogen. So we're going to need the help of NEOM Green Hydrogen Project in order to decarbonize the current use that we have today for hydrogen. Now the story doesn't stop here. Where everybody is getting really excited about is that hydrogen can really help to decarbonize what we call those hard-to-abate sectors that we cannot really electrify that easily today. So the usual application we're referring to earlier, that's roughly 3.5–4% of the global emissions. When we move to likes of aviation, long-distance shipping, steel, numbers start getting a little bit bigger. We're talking about potentially 15% of the global emissions. Power generation, that's maybe the least obvious application because, I mean, everybody's focused on integrating renewable energy into the existing systems. But it's not always obvious that we're going to be able to do that that easily. The first instance is countries that don't have resources. Japan is one typical example that is looking at hydrogen to integrate already in the power system today. But as well, in the countries that are blessed and endowed with a lot of renewable energy, when we reach very high penetrations of renewable electricity into the system, we will see hydrogen really becoming a very important tool to balance the entire system and really see a strong penetration of hydrogen. But that's something that will happen a little bit further in the future. So all of that, what is the prospect? We hear up to 1,000 or 1,000 million or a billion. 500 million, whatever it will be, big numbers by 2050. So it's a huge opportunity. Why the GCC? Many good factors for the GCC countries and Saudi Arabia in particular. Resources, naturally, there's plenty of wind, plenty of sun in the country, in those countries. And as you know, in order to produce what we call green hydrogen or renewable-based hydrogen, you need a renewable power, electrolysis process to produce this hydrogen. So you need those resources for wind and sun. You need land, lots of land. And we'll see the next slide a little bit to grasp a little bit what it means in terms of land resources. The geographical positioning, the key markets that are expected again to move first towards green hydrogen integration will be primarily Europe and the Far East. Very well connectivity existing. A historical energy industry. The GCC has always been a reliable supplier of energy to the world. And I think that they have a long-established track record, industrial capability in order to build those very large projects, and the ability to finance as well those large projects. And it has ample capacity as well to address the global market. So we just that corner of Saudi Arabia that you see at the bottom of the map, that's enough. That's a plot of land that receives enough solar energy to produce those 500 million tons of green hydrogen that are projected to be potentially required by 2050. Is it going to happen? No. We're not going to put effectively the entire global production in Saudi Arabia, but it just means that the GCC will be a very relevant player in the future in order to produce and export green hydrogen and green molecules to the global market. How will the GCC reach out, of course, to the markets? Again, we talked about the geographical positioning. We expect trading to primarily happen through shipping, especially in the early days. Pipelines have a very attractive value proposition, but they will need a lot of volumes in order to justify really the deployment of pipelines. But eventually it will happen, and I think the GCC are right now at reach to the European market to be able to deploy those pipelines. But in the meantime, we really see that shipping through particularly green ammonia will allow this gradual, effectively, penetration into the market, reaching out, of course, not only the nearby markets, but as well the far off markets that we have no other option but to receive molecules through shipping. Cost is an important factor. How does the GCC compare with the rest of the world? We're pretty convinced that we are in the place in the world where green hydrogen will be the cheapest. We talked about many of the critical factors: renewable resources, land, industrial capacity, financing. That all of that effectively means that we are very confident that in the future the lowest cost will be happening here in this region, and that effectively justifies the vision around being a major player. When you look at countries like Europe or in the US, this is where most of the announcements are happening around green hydrogen projects. But the reality is that between the announcement and the conversion into actual projects that reach final investment decision, there is still a gap. And we believe that this gap will happen for multiple factors. Number one, I think the conditions, particularly in the European market, are not all there to allow those very large-scale green hydrogen projects to happen. One obvious issue is land. We've just seen how much land do we need. I don't think you will find the size of Belgium just to cover the needs of Europe that are planned by 2030, covered in solar panels and wind. That is going to be a pretty difficult value proposition. And on top of that, we are convinced as well that exports, or I would say imports from the GCC, will be able to outcompete local production and by far, which I think will eventually push people to realize that value is not always in producing locally. In terms of trading, I think we discussed about, but the big flows that we expect to see from the region out towards primarily Europe and Japan. And at the same time, I think that what is very important is to ensure effectively diverse global supply. So we don't expect the entire world to rely on the GCC simply because, as we see in this new geopolitical context, countries will want to have a diverse access to sourcing green hydrogen and energy in general. So you will see for sure competing geographies: Australia, North Africa, Latin America, for sure being major players as well. A lot of ambition, great potential, but things are still not happening yet. Out of the many different announcements, unfortunately, there is only one giga-scale project that has reached FID, and it's in this region, in Saudi Arabia. It's the NEOM Green Hydrogen Project. We are proud to be part of that project, but we want to see more of these projects actually happening. And I think that most of the projects right now that are moving are primarily blue hydrogen and mostly in North America. But I think the rest are, we're still falling short of projects actually happening or even being announced to be on track for the net zero scenario by 2030. And one of the key issues that we're seeing is the fact that this market is primarily driven by regulation today. And there are still some important critical milestones that need to happen on the regulatory front, particularly in the key markets, whether it's in Europe or in Japan. The delegated act has been passed in the EU, but it still has to be translated into actual law at each and every country. In Japan, they are putting together their policy. It's actually, the draft is being circulated right now. It will go to the Diet, but still hasn't been passed. So we see really 2024 as a inflection point for the market and the ability for the potential buyers to commit, because we will see those regulatory effectively moves happening really over 2024 and early 2025. Now, since we're talking about innovation, because that's the main topic of the day, I think I just wanted to give a bit of a perspective about what drives really a green hydrogen or a green molecules project. When we look at the overall value chain, which is a very complex one actually, 60-65% of the total investment today, based on the current technology, is in the what we call the power system, renewable production, grid to move the electrons, and as well the various equipment in order to support the production of very large-scale renewable energy. Then you have the other very critical factor, which is the electrolysis, where we convert the electricity into hydrogen molecules. So this is where the actual the performance is happening. But from an investment perspective, it's fairly limited. It's 20-25% of the total chain. And then, of course, you have the what we call the rest of the chain midstream for exporting the molecules, converting it to put it on a ship, and reach out to the customers. Looking at that, power is pretty much. We don't expect a revolution, or all of a sudden the power is going to cost half. That is not going to happen. There will be incremental improvements, and we have many friends here who are working very hard to make it even better and better, but it will be incremental improvements. But we're not going to completely change the game by halving the cost of power. So what is left is the piece in between, which is the electrolysis process. Today, actually, electrolysis is not very efficient. We are wasting potentially 30-40% of the energy that we put into an electrolyzer in heat. And each 1% of efficiency improvement on the electrolysis process will have a dramatic impact on the cost of hydrogen. So if I have a message to the audience and the people that are working on that, please focus on efficiency, 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 efficiency. This is what matters. I don't even think that cost matters actually on electrolyzers today, where especially looking at the technology where it is. But the key that will really change the game and allow this market to reach the heights that are planned and projected. Because when we talk about 500 million tons, it will only happen if it's affordable. Let's not fool ourselves. It's not going to happen just because people are imposing rules for people to consume hydrogen. It will happen if it becomes affordable. And the only way to make it affordable is to really have game-changing technologies that appear to bring up the efficiency of the electrolysis process. So I will leave you with that message. Thank you everyone for your attention, and enjoy your lunch. Okay.